This is Antarctica, the coldest place on Earth, the most unforgiving. Temperatures drop below minus 50 degrees Celsius. Winds exceed 200 kilometers per hour. No help is nearby. No rescue is coming. Out here, a single mistake becomes fatal. A delay becomes death. Men came here chasing glory, but many never returned. This is not just a story of exploration. This is a story of survival against a continent that refuses to be conquered. At the bottom of the world lies Antarctica, a continent defined not by life but by absence. No cities, no permanent human civilization, no mercy. This is a land buried beneath nearly 2 kilometers of ice, covering an area larger than Europe. From space, it appears silent, untouched. But on the ground, it is anything but still. Beneath that frozen surface lies a system in constant motion. Ice shifting, winds accelerating, temperatures collapsing without warning. Antarctica is not simply cold. It is engineered by nature to resist survival. Temperatures here can fall below minus 50 degrees Celsius, and in the deep interior, even lower. The air itself becomes a threat. Exposed skin freezes within minutes. Breathing burns the lungs. Every step across the ice demands energy the human body struggles to produce in such extremes. But the danger is not just physical, it is psychological. For months at a time, darkness consumes the continent. The sun disappears below the horizon, leaving behind a prolonged night that distorts time, weakens the mind, and isolates anyone trapped within it. There are no natural rhythms here, no familiar cycles, us only silence, and the constant pressure of survival. And yet, despite all of this, humans came. They came chasing something intangible: glory, discovery, the desire to stand where no one had stood before. During the early 20th century, a period now known as the heroic age of Antarctic exploration, nations sent men into this frozen void with limited technology, incomplete maps, and an understanding of the risks that was at best dangerously optimistic. They believed Antarctica could be conquered. They were wrong. Because Antarctica does not negotiate, it does not forgive mistakes, it does not care about ambition, courage, or preparation. It simply exists, cold, vast, and indifferent. And for those who entered unprepared, or made a single critical error, this continent became their final destination. What unfolded here were not just expeditions, they were tests of human endurance at the very edge of possibility. Some survived, many did not. Geography and physical conditions. Antarctica is not just another landmass, it is a continent engineered by extremes. It is the 5th largest continent on Earth, yet nearly all of it is buried beneath a permanent ice sheet. This ice is not thin. In some regions, it reaches depths of over 4 kilometers. It locks the land beneath in complete silence, hiding mountains, valleys, and entire landscapes that have not been seen for millions of years. From above, it looks flat, endless, featureless. But that illusion is deadly. Beneath the surface lies a fractured world, deep crevasses concealed by fragile snow bridges. A single step in the wrong place can send a person plunging into darkness, vanishing into ice that never releases what it takes. The continent is divided into 2 main regions: East Antarctica and West Antarctica. East Antarctica is older, colder, and more stable. West Antarctica, however, is more volatile. Its ice shelves extend into the ocean, constantly shifting, cracking, and breaking apart. At the edges of the continent, the ice meets the sea. Here, the danger transforms. Massive icebergs, some larger than entire cities, break away from glaciers and drift into the surrounding waters. These floating giants create a constantly changing maze, capable of trapping ships without warning. Early explorers had no satellite imagery, no forecasting systems. They navigated blindly into these frozen barriers, often with no way out. Yes, and then there is the wind. Antarctica produces some of the most powerful winds on Earth, katabatic winds. These are not ordinary gusts. They are dense, freezing air masses that accelerate downhill from the interior of the continent, reaching speeds of over 200 kilometers per hour. They do not simply blow. They erase visibility. They strip heat from the body instantly. They turn the landscape into a white, moving void. In these conditions, direction disappears. The horizon vanishes. Sky and ground merge into one endless white field, a phenomenon known as a whiteout. Without visual reference, even experienced explorers lose their sense of orientation. Walking in a straight line becomes nearly impossible. Distance itself becomes deceptive. What appears close may take hours to reach. What seems like solid ground may collapse beneath your feet. The human brain, conditioned by familiar environments, struggles to interpret this alien terrain. And then there is isolation. Antarctica is the most remote place on Earth. The nearest help is often thousands of kilometers away. There are no roads, no immediate rescue systems, no margin for delay. If equipment fails, if supplies run low, if injury occurs, the consequences are immediate and often irreversible. Every expedition that entered this continent faced the same reality. There is no safe path. There is no controlled environment. There is only exposure. And in Antarctica, exposure is not just discomfort. It is a countdown. Environmental systems. In Antarctica, survival is not determined by strength alone. It is controlled by systems far larger than any human can influence. Everything here is in motion. Invisible forces shape every moment, and they do so without warning. At the center of it all is the polar climate system. Antarctica is the coldest place on Earth not by coincidence but by design. Its high elevation, reflective ice surface, and isolation by surrounding oceans create a feedback loop of extreme cooling. Sunlight, when it arrives, is reflected back into space. Heat is never retained. The continent exists in a constant state of energy loss. This imbalance drives the atmosphere into instability. Cold, dense air forms over the interior plateau and begins to move. Gravity pulls it downward toward the coast, accelerating as it descends. These are the katabatic winds, relentless, forceful, and capable of reaching hurricane speeds. They do not build gradually. They arrive suddenly. One moment, the air is still. The next, it becomes a wall of force. Temperatures drop instantly. Wind chill drives the effective temperature far below survivable limits. Frostbite no longer takes minutes, it takes seconds. And then come the storms. Blizzards in Antarctica are not just heavy snowfall. They are complete environmental shutdowns. Snow, wind, and ice particles fill the air so densely that visibility drops to zero. Sound becomes distorted. Direction becomes meaningless. This is the whiteout. In a whiteout, the human eye loses all reference points. There is no horizon, no shadows, no depth perception. The ground and sky merge into a single, blinding field of white. Walking forward feels like standing still. Even experienced explorers have walked in circles, unknowingly drifting away from safety. But the dangers are not limited to the surface. Beneath the snow lies a hidden network of crevasses, deep fractures in the ice formed by its constant movement. Some are visible. Many are not. Thin layers of snow conceal openings hundreds of meters deep. A single misstep can break that fragile surface. There is no time to react, no way to recover. And along the coast, another system waits. The sea ice. Unlike solid land ice, sea ice forms and breaks with the rhythm of the ocean. It expands during winter and fractures during warmer periods. Early explorers often relied on it as a stable platform, only to find themselves trapped as it shifted beneath them. Ships became prisoners. Ice closed in slowly, tightening its grip until hulls cracked under pressure. Once trapped, escape was nearly impossible. Crews were forced to abandon their vessels, stepping onto unstable ice fields that could break apart at any moment. These systems, wind, temperature, ice, and ocean, do not operate independently. They interact. They amplify each other. They create conditions that evolve faster than humans can respond. And perhaps the most dangerous part of all, there is no warning system. No early signal. No second chance. By the time you realize what is happening, you are already inside it. Early exploration and the race for the South Pole. At the beginning of the 20th century, Antarctica became the stage for one of the most dangerous competitions in human history. This was not a race driven by survival. It was driven by ambition. Nations sought prestige. Explorers sought legacy. And at the center of it all stood a single objective: to reach the South Pole. But Antarctica was not a place that rewarded ambition alone. It demanded precision, discipline, and an understanding of an environment that few truly grasped. Among those who entered this frozen contest were two men, Roald Amundsen and Robert Falcon Scott. They shared the same goal, but they followed very different paths. Amundsen approached Antarctica as a system to be understood. He studied Arctic survival techniques, learned from indigenous knowledge, and designed his expedition around efficiency. He used sled dogs for transport, wore fur clothing for insulation, and planned his route with careful attention to terrain and weather patterns. Every decision reduced risk. Scott, leading the Terra Nova expedition, took a different approach. His expedition combined exploration with scientific research, increasing the weight of supplies and complexity of logistics. He relied partly on motor sledges, ponies, and human hauling, methods that proved unreliable in Antarctic conditions. His margin for error was smaller. In October 1911, both expeditions began their journeys toward the pole. Amundsen moved with speed and efficiency. His team advanced across the ice using dogs, conserving energy and maintaining momentum. They adapted to conditions as they changed, maintaining strict discipline. On December 14, 1911, Amundsen and his team reached the South Pole. They planted their flag and left. No delays, no hesitation. Survival remained the priority. Weeks later, Scott and his team arrived at the same location. But what they found was not victory. It was proof that they were too late. The Norwegian flag was already there. What followed was not a race, it was a retreat. And in Antarctica, retreat is often more dangerous than advance. Exhaustion had already set in. Supplies were limited. Weather conditions deteriorated rapidly. Temperatures dropped further. Winds intensified. And the physical toll of pulling heavy sledges across endless ice began to break the team down. One by one, the system failed. Equipment slowed them. Bodies weakened. Decisions became harder under pressure. The environment closed in. Scott and his team never made it back. They perished on the return journey, just miles from a supply depot that could have saved them. Their story became one of the most tragic outcomes in the history of exploration. Not because they lacked courage, but because Antarctica exposed every weakness in their plan. This race revealed a brutal truth. Success in Antarctica is not determined by who arrives first, but by who survives the journey back. Real incidents and disasters. In Antarctica, failure is rarely dramatic in a single moment. It is slow, relentless, unforgiving. And for many expeditions, it did not begin with catastrophe. It began with a single miscalculation. The Terra Nova expedition, 1910 to 1913. Led by Robert Falcon Scott, this expedition remains one of the most haunting tragedies in polar history. After reaching the South Pole, only to discover they had been beaten, Scott and his team began their return journey under worsening conditions. Supplies ran low. Temperatures dropped further than expected. Fatigue became constant. One team member, Edgar Evans, collapsed and died. Another, Lawrence Oates, suffering from severe frostbite, made a decision that would define the expedition's legacy. Knowing he was slowing the group down, he stepped out of the tent into a blizzard, saying maybe sometime. He never returned. Scott and the remaining men pressed on, but Antarctica had already decided the outcome. They were found months later inside their tent, frozen just 11 miles from a supply depot. So close, yet unreachable. The Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, 1914 to 1917. If Scott's story is one of tragedy, then Ernest Shackleton represents survival against impossible odds. His ship, Endurance, became trapped in pack ice before even reaching the continent. For months, the crew drifted, locked in a frozen prison as pressure from the surrounding ice slowly crushed the vessel. Eventually, the ship broke apart. The crew was left stranded on floating ice, hundreds of kilometers from land. No communication, no rescue, no certainty of survival. What followed was one of the greatest survival journeys ever recorded. Shackleton led his men across unstable ice floes, then launched lifeboats into some of the most violent seas on Earth. They reached the desolate Elephant Island, but it offered no real escape. So Shackleton made a decision. He would leave. With a small crew, he sailed over 1,300 kilometers across the open ocean to reach help. The journey pushed human endurance to its limits. Freezing waves, constant storms, and navigation with minimal tools, against all probability, he succeeded, as every member of his crew survived. In Antarctica, that is not just rare, it is extraordinary. The Australasian Antarctic Expedition, 1911 to 1914. For Douglas Mawson, survival became a solitary battle. During a sledging journey, one of his team members fell into a crevasse, taking with him most of their supplies. Stranded in one of the harshest environments on Earth, Mawson and his remaining companion attempted to return, but conditions worsened. His partner, weakened by exhaustion and illness, eventually died. Mawson was left alone. He suffered frostbite. His skin peeled away. His body deteriorated as he dragged himself across the ice for weeks. At one point, he fell into a crevasse himself, saved only by the rope attached to his sled. Step by step, day by day, he moved forward. Not because he was strong, but because stopping meant death. Against all odds, he reached safety, barely alive. The air. New Zealand Flight 901 disaster, 1979. Even in the modern era, Antarctica continues to claim lives. In 1979, a sightseeing flight carrying passengers over the continent encountered a fatal miscalculation. Due to a navigational error, the aircraft descended directly toward Mount Erebus. The conditions were deceptive. A phenomenon known as whiteout erased visual contrast between the sky and the terrain. The pilots, believing they were flying over flat ground, had no indication of the mountain ahead. There was no warning. The aircraft crashed into the slope of Mount Erebus, killing all 257 people on board. It remains one of the deadliest disasters in Antarctic history. These events are separated by decades. Different Adamianabi, different technologies, different audaciae. Yet the outcome is often the same. Because Antarctica does not change, it does not become safer, it does not become predictable. It remains exactly what it has always been, a place where survival is never guaranteed, and where even the smallest mistake can become the last. Present-day risks. Today, Antarctica is no longer unknown. Satellites map its surface, aircraft cross its skies, research stations operate year-round. On the surface, it appears that technology has reduced the risks, but Antarctica has not changed. It has only revealed new ways to challenge those who enter it. Modern expeditions are built on precision. Scientists from organizations like National Science Foundation and International Antarctic Programs maintain stations across the continent, studying climate, ice cores, and atmospheric systems. These facilities are engineered for survival. Reinforced structures, insulated modules, and carefully managed supply chains. Yet even here, the margin for error remains razor-thin. A sudden storm can isolate a station for days. Aircraft cannot land in high winds or zero visibility. Supply missions are often delayed, sometimes for weeks. In this environment, delay is not an inconvenience, it is a risk multiplier. Transportation remains one of the greatest challenges. Pilots flying over Antarctica must navigate one of the most visually deceptive environments on Earth. Whiteouts still occur. Depth perception disappears. Ice and sky merge into a single, featureless horizon. Even with advanced instruments, human judgment can be compromised. The tragedy of Air New Zealand Flight 901 disaster remains a reminder that technology does not eliminate danger. It only reduces reaction time. On the ground, movement is slow and calculated. Tracked vehicles replace sledges, GPS replaces compasses, and insulated gear protects against extreme cold. But none of these eliminate the fundamental threats. Crevasses still lie hidden beneath the surface. Ice shelves still fracture without warning. Temperatures still drop beyond survivable limits. If a vehicle breaks down far from base, recovery is not guaranteed. Rescue operations in Antarctica are among the most complex on Earth. Distance, weather, and limited infrastructure combine to create a reality where immediate help is rarely possible. In many cases, teams must solve their own emergencies, because no one else can reach them in time. Even the human body remains vulnerable. Prolonged exposure to isolation affects mental stability. The long Antarctic winter, months of darkness, can lead to sleep disruption, stress, and psychological fatigue. Crews must operate not just as scientists, but as a self-contained survival unit. Every system must function, every Vyekti must perform. Because failure in one area can cascade into a larger crisis, and beyond science, a new presence has emerged: tourism. Ships now carry visitors across the Southern Ocean, offering a glimpse into this extreme world. While regulations exist, the risks remain real. Changing ice conditions, unpredictable weather, and mechanical failures still pose serious threats. Antarctica does not distinguish between explorer and tourist. It treats all the same. Despite all advancements, one truth remains unchanged. There is no complete control here. No absolute safety. Only preparation and response. Because in Antarctica, even in the modern age, nature still sets the terms. Final section. Conclusion. At the edge of the world, Antarctica remains what it has always been: untouched, unforgiving, unconquered. For over a century, humans have come here with ambition. They brought technology, planning, and the belief that preparation could overcome nature. Sometimes it did, but often it did not. From the frozen fate of Robert Falcon Scott and his team, to the near-impossible survival led by Ernest Shackleton, to the silent tragedy of Air New Zealand Flight 901 disaster, the pattern is clear. Antarctica does not measure effort. It does not reward courage alone. It exposes limits. Here, every decision carries weight. Every khutwa matters, and every bhul, no matter how small, can escalate into something irreversible. This is not a place where humans dominate. It is a place where humans are tested. Tested by cold so intense it reshapes the body, by isolation so deep it challenges the mind, by forces so vast they cannot be controlled, only endured. And yet, people still come. Not because it is safe, not because it is easy, but because Antarctica represents something few places on Earth still can: the unknown. A place where the rules are different, where survival is never guaranteed, and where nature reminds us with absolute clarity that it is still in control. In the end, Antarctica is not just a continent. It is a boundary between preparation and unpredictability, between ambition and reality, between survival and a nihaya. And for those who cross into it, there is only one certainty: you are no longer in charge.